Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. The day I told her I was expecting, she looked me in the eye and said, "So, you finally got what you wanted?" It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Dry as bone, eyes cold and unblinking. I had just handed her the most intimate joy of my life, and she tossed it back to me like I'd announced a hostile takeover. I was 36. My husband, Noah, and I had been trying for almost 6 years. Fertility drugs, hormone shots, quiet crying in bathroom stalls, the miscarriage at week 9, the specialist in Maryland who said it was unlikely but not impossible. I had built a second skin from disappointment, but that day in our kitchen, holding a positive test that still felt surreal, I felt soft again, exposed, and she sliced right through. Up until then, Linda, my mother-in-law, had always been polite, immaculately dressed, sharply spoken, always with a hostess smile that never quite reached her eyes. Think silver hair swept into a knot, pearls without irony, and a voice like she was always being recorded. From the outside, she was the perfect matriarch, generous, composed, deeply involved in community charities and bridge tournaments. She called me dear and sent us tickets to the symphony each anniversary. Never raised her voice. Never seemed to care much either way. We weren't close, but we coexisted. Until the pregnancy. Noah was thrilled, nervous, instantly Googling prenatal vitamins and how to build a crib. He wanted to tell everyone, but I asked him to wait a week or two, just in case. I made him promise. But apparently, the first person he told was his mother. "She's family," he said, brushing my worry aside. "She'll be over the moon?" She wasn't. That sentence was the start of something I still don't fully understand. So you finally got what you wanted. Like I'd schemed. Like I'd clawed my way into this pregnancy to claim something that didn't belong to me. I laughed, awkwardly, and said, "Yes, finally," thinking maybe I'd misread her tone. She tilted her head and smiled, but her eyes didn't smile back. We lived in a modest but warm brownstone in Brooklyn, our little nest. It had creaky floors and a stubborn radiator, but I'd learned its rhythms. Linda lived in a sweeping colonial in Westchester, draped in floral curtains and family portraits that dated back to the Kennedy administration. Her husband, Noah's father, had died years ago. Cancer. I never met him, but Noah still spoke of him with boyish reverence. Linda had built a shrine in the form of tradition. His seat at the dinner table never moved. For years, I'd felt slightly out of place in their world, like I was always in borrowed clothes. I was raised in a small apartment above a bakery in Queens. My mother worked the counter until her back gave out, and my father left before I had memories. But I had warmth. We didn't have pearls, but we had belly laughs and cluttered tables and music on Sundays. Linda noticed the difference. She never said it aloud, but she noticed. I spent the first few months of pregnancy in a fog of nausea and quiet awe. I whispered to my belly, watched old reruns with my feet up, journaled with the reverence of someone chronicling a miracle. Noah tried his best to help, but work had picked up. He was a partner at a firm downtown, and billable hours were a relentless beast. It was Linda who began to show up, unannounced, always with some item I hadn't asked for. A Himalayan salt lamp, a vibrating rocker, a book on raising gifted children. She didn't ask. She just dropped them on the kitchen island and offered advice like a pastor giving confession. "Don't eat too much fruit, it spikes blood sugar. Are you sleeping on your left side yet? You should think twice about daycare, you know." At first I smiled, nodded, let it roll off. She was excited, I reasoned. It was a big deal. Maybe she just didn't know how to show it. But then the visits got longer. She'd stay for dinner without asking, rearrange the nursery we hadn't even started. One evening, I came home from an OB appointment to find her painting the guest room. "Soft sage is better for the baby's temperament," she said, not looking up from her brush strokes. I stood there, the echo of the Doppler still fresh in my ears. Ba-dump, ba-dump, and suddenly felt like I'd walked into someone else's house. It wasn't that Noah didn't notice. It's that he didn't know how to handle her. She'd always ruled his life with a velvet glove, never shouting, always suggesting. He loved her, and I loved that he did. But I started to see something I hadn't before. He was still trying to earn her approval. "Babe, she just wants to help," he'd say, rubbing my feet as I vented. "She said she wants to be in the delivery room." He froze. "Wait, you told her no, right?" "I said I hadn't decided." "Tell her no." "I did. She said she already talked to the hospital and had a plan." "Noah. She's acting like this is her baby." He was quiet, too long. "Noah?" He sighed. "It's just, she doesn't have much else. She has a life, a house, a garden, a foundation in her name. You know what I mean." But I didn't, not anymore. The baby's name was a battle. Noah and I had chosen Elias. It was soft, biblical, full of meaning for us. I had written it in my journal 100 times. One afternoon, we were all seated around Linda's sprawling dining table for a Sunday lunch she'd insisted on. Watercress sandwiches and tomato soup so thin it looked like pink tea. "We're thinking Elias," I said gently. She blinked. "Elias? That's unfortunate." Noah choked on his soup. "Why?" "Well, it's not strong. Doesn't exactly command a room, does it?" She tilted her head. "What about William? Or Jonathan? Something classic." "I'm not naming him after your father," I said, before I could stop myself. The room went cold. "I didn't suggest that," she replied, lifting her spoon. "You didn't have to." I barely touched my lunch. It wasn't one big explosion. It was death by 1,000 cuts. The constant phone calls, the forwarded articles, the unsolicited purchases. I bought a car seat for my car. He'll be spending a lot of time with me after all. The way she spoke about our child in terms of her legacy. One day, I overheard her on the phone with her sister in the living room. She didn't know I was home early. "Yes, of course I'll be helping full time. Poor thing doesn't have a clue. I'll need to take charge for the baby's sake. We can't let him be raised. Well, you know." I stood in the hallway, my hands trembling. That was the moment I decided. She had built her empire on quiet control. I would take it back the same way. I didn't confront her. I didn't march in and demand she explain herself. That's what she expected. That's how she operated. Draw you into polite conflict, wrap you in guilt like a cashmere shawl, and win with a sigh. I just started making calls. It began with Anna, a doula recommended by my yoga teacher. Soft-spoken, grounded, the kind of woman who made you feel safe just by walking into a room. I told her I was planning a hospital birth, but I needed options. She listened, didn't push. When I finally said, "I think I want to do this at home," she nodded, like she'd already known. Noah was hesitant. He worried about risk, about what the neighbors would think, about what his mother would say. But once we talked through everything, supplies, emergency backups, midwife team, timing, he surprised me. If this gives you peace, he said, then we'll do it your way. I cried into his shoulder that night, not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in months, I felt like this baby was mine again. Meanwhile, Linda escalated. She started coming by with bags of necessities for her grandson, emphasis always on the possessive, onesies monogrammed with the name William, a crib for her house, even a gold locket with a space for a baby picture and her initials on the back. I caught her in our nursery one afternoon, holding one of the swaddles to her chest like it was already born. "Oh," she said when she saw me in the doorway, "I was just imagining." I didn't reply. I just walked away. She didn't see the list on the dresser. Elias, peaceful, defender of truth, my son. Then came the uninvited guests, distant cousins, friends from her garden club, even her pastor, brought over to bless the baby or see how we're doing. They all had the same look, kind, curious, a little puzzled. "So, you're not going back to work?" one of them asked delicately. I blinked. I didn't say that. "Oh, sorry. Linda said you'd be taking at least a year. She's rearranged her schedule, you know. Such a blessing for the baby." Every time she spoke of Elias to others, she erased me. I wasn't a mother in her stories. I was an incubator. I started writing again. It had been years, since college, really, but something about putting my thoughts on paper helped me see them more clearly. I wrote letters to my unborn son. I told him about the smell of our kitchen after rain, about the quiet strength of his father, about the stories I'd read to him when his eyes were still closed to the world. I told him he was wanted, that I had fought for him, and that no one would take him from me. I also kept a second notebook, not spiteful, not vengeful, just records, dates, things Linda said, times she showed up unannounced, the way she corrected me in front of others, the subtle ways she pushed, maneuvered, inserted herself. Not because I planned to use it, just because I needed to see it for what it was. A slow invasion. When I was 35 weeks along, Linda hosted a baby brunch at her house. She didn't ask me, just sent out invitations to her friends, people I barely knew, and expected me to smile and sit with my belly on display like a wedding cake. I told Noah I didn't want to go. He said we should just get through it. So I did. I wore a loose dress, dabbed concealer under my tired eyes, and braced myself. She had redecorated an entire wing of her house. A full nursery, crib, rocking chair, changing table, jungle-themed wallpaper. "For when Elias stays over," she explained brightly. I stared at the wallpaper. The giraffes had her eyes. One of her friends squeezed my hand and whispered, "You're so lucky, dear. Not everyone has a second mother to lean on like this." I smiled politely, then excused myself to the bathroom. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and stared at myself in the mirror. My stomach rose and fell with the rhythm of tiny kicks. "You are not a second," I whispered. "You are his first." Linda followed me into the hallway as we were leaving. Her voice was syrupy. "I've taken care of the pediatrician paperwork. We'll use the same doctor Noah had. Wonderful man. Still in practice." I blinked. I already picked a pediatrician. She laughed like I'd told a joke. "Oh, I know you're new to all this, dear. I'm just helping streamline things. Babies are a lot of work. I'll be taking him Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to start. Gives you some space." It was the first time I didn't answer with a smile. I looked at her. Really looked. She was 5 inches taller than me, always had been. But in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't afraid of her. I was angry. Not loud, flailing anger, quiet, heavy, anchored in your bones anger. She had mistaken my gentleness for weakness. She had forgotten I'd built this baby from ashes. After that, I went silent. I answered her texts with one-word replies. I stopped picking up her calls. I said I was resting more, which was true. But what I didn't say was that I was preparing. I ordered the birthing tub, cleared the guest room, made a list of who would be notified and when. I told Noah, Anna, and the midwives. No one else. We practiced what to say if Linda showed up unexpectedly. We had backup plans, just in case. Every evening I whispered to Elias, "Just a little longer. We're almost there." Linda sent emails about hospital snacks, car routes, parking details. I didn't respond. 2 weeks before my due date, she left a voicemail. "I've packed a bag. Don't worry. I'll stay out of the way. Just want to be there to support you." I deleted it. That night, I took a long bath. Candles, music, hands over belly, and I made a promise to myself, to my son. This birth would belong to us. Elias was born on a Wednesday afternoon, while rain tapped gently on our window panes and the world outside was too grey and quiet to interrupt us. Labour had started just after dawn. I woke to a cramp deep in my back, like a whispered reminder. I lay there in the half-light, hands on my belly, knowing before the next wave came that this was it. I didn't scream, I didn't panic. I moved like a tide coming in, deliberate, inevitable. Noah called Anna, who arrived with calm in her breath and strength in her arms. She dimmed the lights, set warm towels by the tub, rubbed my back between contractions. The midwives came soon after, their voices low, their presence steady. Everyone moved like they had rehearsed it in a dream. And in that small, glowing room, my space, I brought my son into the world. No hospital, no bright lights, no sterile corridors or visitor badges. Just the rhythm of my body, the warmth of my home, and the beating heart of a woman who had waited too long to hand her story to someone else. He arrived at 3:18 p.m., wailing and perfect. They placed him on my chest, slick and tiny, his mouth seeking instinctively. I felt something in my ribs break and expand, like my lungs were learning to breathe again, this time for two. Noah cried. I laughed. "I did it," I whispered. Anna smiled. "You did." We didn't tell Linda until the next morning. It was Noah who sent the text. Simple, neutral. "Elias was born yesterday. Everyone is healthy. We'll let you know when we're ready for visitors." It took her 6 minutes to call. Noah didn't pick up. The second voicemail came 5 minutes later, her voice brittle with restrained panic. "You what? At home? With no doctor? That's completely irresponsible, Noah. What were you thinking? I could have helped. I was supposed to be there." She didn't mention me once. We waited another day. Then Noah texted a photo, just Elias, wrapped in a soft blanket, sleeping against my chest. No commentary, no caption, just fact. We didn't hear from her for 2 days. When she finally replied, it was an email, precise, clipped, barely a paragraph. "I hope you know what you've done." I did. I had reclaimed my place. When she did come to meet him, I made the rules clear. 1 hour. We're not passing him around. No unannounced visits, no advice unless asked, and no photos on social media. Noah read the list aloud while I nursed Elias in the next room. She arrived with a bouquet so large it could have hidden a person. Lipstick perfect, heels unnecessarily tall, eyes guarded. She didn't hug me, didn't congratulate me. She just looked down at Elias in my arms and said, "He looks like my son." I smiled, tired and unmovable. "He looks like himself." She sat stiffly on the edge of the couch. "Well, I'm glad he's here. That everything went well enough." There was a pause. Then she reached forward tentatively. I nodded, let her hold him, for exactly 5 minutes. She cried a little. I let her. Then I took him back. She didn't take it well. Over the next weeks, the complaints came in waves, through Noah, through mutual friends, once even through a cousin who called me out of the blue to ask if I was okay. She says you're overwhelmed, that you're pushing people away, that she's worried about the baby's development if he's not around more people. I bit my tongue. She says she's heartbroken. I didn't reply, because the truth is, I was overwhelmed. Not by Elias, but by the years I had spent shrinking myself to avoid offending the woman who thought love was control wrapped in etiquette. Now, I had no energy left to appease her sadness. A month later, she sent us a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, on ivory cardstock, her initials embossed at the top. "I feel excluded," she wrote. "You've made it clear I have no place in this child's life." I held the letter in one hand and Elias in the other. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no urge to call, just a simple clarity. I wasn't excluding her. I was including myself. Anna came by that afternoon just to check in. She held Elias while I drank my first full cup of coffee in weeks. "You're calmer now," she said, smiling. "I feel like I just returned from war." She laughed softly. "Well, in a way, you did." I nodded. And I won. Quietly. She handed him back, brushing a curl from my forehead. "You've got this, you know." I believed her. I began to heal in small ways. I took walks with Elias strapped to my chest, humming softly to him as we passed strangers. I started reading books that had nothing to do with parenting. I left dishes in the sink. I started therapy. I wrote more letters to Elias. Some I'll give him one day. Some I won't. And I forgave myself for not being more polite. I had spent too many years thinking kindness meant silence. Now I knew better. When Elias was about 3 months old, Linda tried one last time to reassert control. She invited us for a family dinner. Just us, she said. No guests, just a simple meal to start fresh. I agreed, not because I believed her, but because I wanted to show her, in person, what the new rules looked like. We arrived at 6:30 sharp. Elias slept in his carrier, his tiny hand curled around one of my scarf tassels. Noah brought a small bouquet of tulips. The house smelled like lemon polish and old ambition. Dinner was salmon, couscous, steamed green beans with just a touch too much butter. Linda wore a pearl grey blouse and a smile I no longer mistook for warmth. She made small talk, asked about sleep schedules and tummy time, complimented Elias's hair. It was polite, civil, almost convincing. And then, as Noah carried dishes into the kitchen and I adjusted Elias in his seat, she struck. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "You'll be going back to work soon, won't you?" I nodded. "Next month. Part-time to start." "Of course. And you haven't finalized childcare, have you?" I said nothing. She smiled. "I'll take him on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's settled. You can drop him off in the morning and I'll bring him back by dinner time. I've already spoken to the garden club. I'll be stepping back." I blinked. "You made this decision alone?" I asked calmly. "I'm helping, dear. You're stretched thin. I can see it. He'll thrive here. No. Her smile faltered. No. No, Linda, you won't be watching Elias. She straightened her back. Don't be emotional. This isn't about you. I looked her in the eye. He's my son. She laughed, but it was hollow. I raised 2 children. You think you know better than me? I think I know myself, and I know what control dressed up as help looks like. For a moment, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not rage, not sadness. Fear. Because she could feel it. Her power slipping. Noah returned just as she stood, napkin clenched in her hand. She doesn't want my help, she said, her voice tight. Apparently she knows everything already. Noah glanced at me. I gave him a small nod. He placed the plates on the counter and walked over to Linda. Mom, he said quietly, you need to let go. It was the first time I had ever heard him speak to her like that. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she said nothing, just sank slowly back into her chair, like the air had gone out of her. We packed up and left. She didn't walk us to the door. She stopped calling for a while after that. And then, slowly, she returned, but changed, smaller, measured. She came with scheduled visits, brought food she didn't criticize, held Elias with a kind of awe instead of assumption. I didn't let her babysit. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I let her sit beside us on the floor once as Elias gurgled and tried to grab my earrings. I let her tell him a story about Noah as a boy. I even let her bring a framed photo of her late husband for Elias's nursery shelf. I wasn't vindictive. I was firm. Because I finally understood that forgiveness doesn't mean access. It means freedom. At a coffee shop one morning, a woman I barely knew from Linda's book club approached me. She was warm, chatty, told me how proud Linda was. She says you're very strong-willed, she said with a smile. I sipped my latte. She's not wrong. She tilted her head. You've really come into your own. I looked down at Elias, asleep against my chest. No, I said. I've just returned to it. One rainy evening, I found the notebook again, the one I'd filled during pregnancy. Notes about Linda, quotes, little indignities. I read it cover to cover. Then I tore it up. Not out of denial, but because I didn't need proof anymore. The victory had already unfolded in quiet, daily choices, saying no, not apologizing for it, holding my ground without raising my voice. She had made the mistake of thinking this was about her. It never was. It was about remembering my own spine. Spring came slowly that year. Elias started to laugh, not just gurgles or hiccupy chuckles, but real, belly-deep laughter. It sounded like freedom, like the noise a heart makes when it finally unpacks the weight it wasn't meant to carry. I danced with him in the living room, barefoot on the rug. I cooked again, just for fun. I watched the sunset from the window while he napped on my chest, his breath rising and falling like he was still part of me. And Linda? She adjusted. It didn't happen all at once, but the boundaries I set didn't collapse. And eventually, she stopped testing them. Our conversations shifted. She asked before coming over. She listened when I spoke. She even apologized, clumsily, once, over tea. I suppose I didn't realize how much space I was taking up. I didn't say anything, just handed her another biscuit. She didn't try to force closeness again. She accepted what was offered. And I saw, for the first time, a version of her not trying to run the show, Just a woman with a full heart and empty hands. It was enough. Elias turned one on a quiet Saturday, surrounded by crumbs, crumpled wrapping paper, and laughter. I didn't throw a party. I didn't make a Pinterest-perfect cake. I made banana muffins and let him smear frosting across his cheeks like war paint. Linda came for an hour, brought a single book, nothing else. She kissed him on the forehead and asked, "May I take a photo?" I said yes. She didn't post it. She framed it later and gave it to us in a simple envelope. I hung it in the hallway. Sometimes people ask me what changed, how I handled my mother-in-law. They say it like it's a battle won, like there must have been a secret trick. There wasn't. I didn't scream. I didn't exile her or burn the bridge. I just stood still. And when she rushed forward, expecting me to step aside, she hit something she didn't expect. A woman who would not move. A mother. Now, on early mornings, when Elias is up with the birds and I'm making coffee with one hand and holding him with the other, I catch my reflection in the window, soft, tired, a little wild-haired, but whole. This home is mine. This rhythm, mine. This life? It wasn't handed to me. I built it. Not to prove anything, not to win, but because I finally stopped asking for permission to take up space in my own story. Linda thought I was carrying her grandchild. She forgot I was also carrying my own spine.